Hello, and thank you for joining me for Financial Aid 101 for the 2026-2027 academic year. The intended audience for this presentation is any student or parent of a student who will be attending college in fall 2026 or spring 2027 and who need information about financial aid and how to apply for financial aid. My name is Deanna, and I'm the Director of Financial Aid at Joliet Junior College. Most of the information in today's presentation is general financial aid information and therefore helpful no matter which college you may be thinking of attending. Thanks for being here, and let's jump right in. Today we will discuss what financial aid is, where to get started on applying for financial aid, the changes to the process under the FAFSA Simplification Act, cost of attendance, and the types and sources of financial aid that a student may be eligible for. Although this presentation is mostly geared towards students who are applying for the 2026-2027 award year, we will make mention in a few areas of what the process is for the 2025-2026 award year as well. High school seniors who are planning to begin college in the 2026 summer semester should plan to complete both the 2025-26 and the 2026-27 FAFSA applications. So what is financial aid? Financial aid is a very broad term that refers to any program or individual that offers financial assistance toward the cost of pursuing an education. This could include grants and scholarships, but it would also include money that a student has to pay back, such as student loans. The general eligibility requirements for federal student aid are that the student is a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. A social security number is required to complete the application. A student must attend a college that is approved for federal funding. They must be seeking a financial aid eligible degree or certificate. They must maintain satisfactory academic progress, and this is defined differently by each school, so you'll want to check with your financial aid office on how they define this. They must not owe a refund on a federal grant, and they must not be in default on a student loan. And finally, they must demonstrate financial need as determined by the FAFSA results. So the first step to apply is to complete the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. You apply online at studentaid.gov. Allow a few business days for your school to receive the results of your FAFSA after you submit it. Big changes were implemented into the FAFSA application starting in the 2024-25 aid year. These changes brought about by the FAFSA Simplification Act passed by Congress in 2020 represented the first major redesign of the FAFSA process in over 40 years. The goal was to make applying for federal student aid easier for students, as well as expand eligibility for federal student aid. We also saw some terminology changes. For example, an expected family contribution, or EFC, was replaced by a student aid index, or SAI. We'll talk more about some of these changes later in the presentation, but we hope you enjoy the new user experience. The 2026-2027 FAFSA will be available to complete starting October 1st, 2025. Applying for financial aid is a yearly process, so you will want to apply beginning October year, academic school year. We recommend students submit the FAFSA as soon as possible every year after the application becomes available because some awards, such as state grants, are first come, first serve and can run out. In order to complete a FAFSA, the student will need an FSA ID username and password. If the student is considered a dependent student, the parent will also need their own FSA ID username and password. The 2026-27 FAFSA may determine that other contributors' information is also needed, such as a step-parent if applicable. In these cases, each contributor will need their own FSA username and ID. Contributors who do not have a Social Security number are still able to create an FSA ID. The student and any other potential contributors should create their FSA ID as soon as possible to be ready to go. All contributors are also going to want to gather their income and tax information. Gather the 2023 income and tax information if you are completing the 2025-26 FAFSA, and gather your 2024 income and tax information if you are completing the 2026-27 FAFSA. Also, decide which colleges you'd like to send your FAFSA information to. It can be sent up to 20 colleges. Each contributor will be invited via email to log into the FAFSA using their required FSA ID and complete their information, as well as electronically sign the FAFSA form. Part of this process will require contributors to consent and approve to retrieve their federal tax information from the IRS via a direct data exchange. Contributors will be able to be logged in and completing their individual portions of the FAFSA at the same time. The student will be able to see once all contributors have completed their portion and will then be able to submit the FAFSA for processing. The Department of Education is requiring that each contributor consent and approve to retrieve FTI data via the direct data exchange. If any contributor refuses, the student will not receive a student aid index and will therefore not be eligible for federal student aid. When the student is completing the FAFSA, the form will ask a series of questions to determine if they are considered an independent or dependent student. If the student meets any of the criteria listed on this slide, then they will be considered an independent student for purposes of the FAFSA. This slide shows some additional questions that are asked on the FAFSA, and if the student can answer yes to any of these, they may also be considered an independent student. Otherwise, if the student does not meet any of the criteria to be considered an independent student, either from this slide or the previous slide, then they are considered a dependent student for purposes of the FAFSA and will be required to submit parent income and tax data on the FAFSA in addition to their own. After the student submits the FAFSA, they will receive a FAFSA submission summary. They should verify that the information on the FAFSA submission summary is correct. If any corrections are needed, return to the FAFSA site, make the corrections, and then resubmit the form. The student will be assigned a Student Aid Index, or SAI. A SAI of negative 1,500 indicates the highest need students. Schools use these numbers to determine financial aid eligibility and awards. When colleges receive your FAFSA information, they will send communication outlining a financial aid package. This may be sent to a student email account or may be on the school's student portal. So if you haven't already, make sure to complete an admissions application for each school that was listed on your FAFSA so you know how they plan to communicate with you. Be sure to read financial aid offers carefully. Some schools will require that you accept or reject an award. And always know what you are accepting. For example, student loans must be repaid with interest. If the student does forget to add a school or has changed their mind on the school they are interested in attending, they can always log back into the FAFSA and add or change the school codes and resubmit. Some students are selected by the Department of Education or by the school for a process called verification. If selected for this process, the school must collect additional documentation in order to verify that the data entered on the FAFSA is accurate. The student may be required to provide additional documents such as tax return transcripts from the IRS, a verification worksheet, and other supporting documentation. Make sure to review all communication received from your school's financial aid office, as they may be requesting these items in order to continue processing a financial aid package. Financial aid may not be awarded or released until the verification process is completed, and depending on the school and the time of year, this process may take a couple of weeks. There are some cases that are considered special or unusual circumstances. In these cases, the data on a FAFSA may be able to be updated by a financial aid administrator at your school to better reflect the current situation. If there's been a qualified change of circumstances, such as a significant loss of household income from a job loss or a divorce, the student may be eligible for a special circumstances appeal to have the income adjusted on the FAFSA. And in certain cases, students may qualify for a dependency override, which would reclassify them from a dependent student to an independent student and would exclude them from having to provide parental data on their FAFSA. Circumstances such as abandonment by parents, unable to locate parents, death of parents, incarceration of parents, etc., may warrant one of these overrides. If a student is experiencing any of these situations, reach out to your school's financial aid office to determine their process. Each school has determined its own average cost of attendance per student, which is composed of various expenses such as tuition, books, living expenses, and transportation. To determine what type of financial aid awards the student will be eligible for, the school will take their cost of attendance and subtract the SAI amount that was calculated from your FAFSA. If the SAI is a negative number, SAI of 0 will be used in this calculation. Any other financial assistance will also be subtracted. The leftover amount is considered the unmet need, and the school's financial aid office will use various resources to help cover the unmet need for the student. Per federal regulation, total awards can never exceed the cost of attendance. These are some of the types of aid that a student may see on their award or offer letter from a college. We'll talk about each of these a little bit more in detail on the next few slides. Pell Grant is federal aid that the student doesn't repay as long as they attend and successfully complete their classes. The maximum annual amount changes yearly. As of the date of this recording, the 2026-2027 Pell amount has not yet been released. For a standard academic calendar school using semesters, the maximum annual amount that a student might receive is split in half over the fall and spring semesters. Additional Pell may be available to students who also attend in the summer semester. The annual award amount a student receives is based on several factors such as adjusted gross income, family size, federal poverty guidelines, and the Student Aid Index, which we will show in detail on the next slide. The award is also based on estimated full-time attendance, which is typically 12 credit hours a semester or more. Students who do not attend full-time will receive a prorated Pell Award based on their enrollment intensity, which is a percentage value based on their actual number of credit hours. And important to know, a Pell Grant can run out. There is a lifetime maximum of 600%, which is the equivalent of 6 years of full-time attendance for grant eligibility. A student will be evaluated under 3 different criteria to determine if they can be awarded the Pell Grant. First, they will be evaluated under the maximum Pell Grant section. I will not read all of these to you, but you can see the chart is broken up by whether the student is a dependent student or an independent student, and then the criteria that they or their parent could meet to be eligible for maximum Pell. If the student does not qualify for maximum Pell, they are then evaluated under the calculated scheduled Pell Grant section. This formula takes the maximum annual Pell Grant amount minus the Student Aid Index and results in the student's calculated scheduled Pell Grant. So for example, if the maximum annual Pell Award for 2026-2027 were $7,850 and the student's SAI was $1,002. We would subtract the $1,002 from the $7,850 and after the required rounding, result in an annual Pell Award of $6,850 for the student. If the student has such a high SAI that they still do not qualify for any Pell under the calculated scheduled Pell Grant formula, then they move on to be evaluated for minimum Pell Grant. Again here, the chart breaks down by dependent and independent student and shows the criteria that must be met for minimum Pell. If the student does not meet any of the criteria under any of these 3 methods, the student would not receive any Pell Grant. Beginning with 2026-27, Pell Grant will not be available to students who have an SAI more than twice the amount of the maximum annual Pell Award, even if they meet one of the other criteria. Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is another federal grant that the student does not have to repay as long as they are attending and successfully completing courses. SEOG is a limited funded grant. It's based on financial need and is awarded to the students with the lowest SAI. The amount of the SEOG award will vary by school. And because this grant has limited funding, there are far fewer students who receive this grant than the Pell Grant. Something to note, this grant is based on federal appropriations and may be eliminated in the 2026-2027 federal budget. The Monetary Award Program, or MAP grant, is an Illinois-based grant. The student must be an Illinois resident and attend an Illinois institution to receive this grant. This is state aid that the student does not have to repay. MAP grant only pays tuition costs and mandatory fees. The maximum annual award amount changes each year, but the student's actual award amount will vary based on the type of institution the student is attending and the student's SAI. MAP grant is not available in the summer semester. The RISE Act was created to help students who were not eligible for federal aid to still be able to apply and potentially receive the Monetary Award Program grant. There is a separate application for these students called the Alternative Application for Illinois Financial Aid, and you can find this alternative application at isac.org. It's also typically available October 1st every year, just like the FAFSA. Federal Work Study is another award a student may see on an offer letter. This is considered earned aid because the student will be employed at and working at the college to earn a paycheck. Work-study jobs are convenient because they are on the college campus and are flexible around the student's class schedule. Something to note, this grant is based on federal appropriations and may be significantly reduced in the 2026-2027 federal budget. Student loans are another type of financial aid. The federal government offers subsidized student loans and unsubsidized student loans, and we'll go into each of these on the next few slides. Both types of loans must be repaid with interest. Let's talk about subsidized loans first. Student loans are funds that must be repaid with interest. Subsidized loans are need-based loans, meaning the student must have unmet need remaining after the calculation that we discussed earlier in this video. When attending college, the interest on this type of loan is paid by the federal government. The student must be attending college at least half-time, which is typically 6 to 8 credit hours, to be eligible. The first repayment on this loan would be due 6 months after the last date of attendance or 6 months after you drop below half-time attendance. The interest rates change every July. Refer to studentaid.gov for the most current rates. And these loans are not based on credit history. Unsubsidized loans are similar to subsidized loans in many ways, so I will only point out the major differences, which you'll see notated in red on the slide. Unsubsidized loans are not need-based, and interest on the loans is charged to the student while they are still attending college. There are limits of how much a student can borrow each year and in each category, subsidized or unsubsidized. These limits are consistent no matter which school a student chooses to attend. These are the annual federal limits. For example, a first-year dependent student annual limit is $5,500 and no more than $3,500 of that can be subsidized loans. There are also lifetime limits as to how much a student can borrow. These limits can be found on studentaid.gov. There are also loans called PLUS loans, where the parent is the borrower. The parent must be creditworthy and complete a PLUS loan application at studentaid.gov. It is important to note that PLUS loan repayment begins right after the last disbursement, and the interest rate is a bit higher. Scholarships are another type of award that a student may see on the financial aid offer letter. We encourage the students to look for scholarship opportunities at each individual college they've applied at. You can usually find information on their websites about scholarships. This slide and the next slide are the only two slides today that are specific to Joliet Junior College and those students thinking of attending Joliet Junior College. If the student is considering attending at JJC, they can apply for scholarships between October 1st and May 1st each year for the following fall semester. These are a few additional scholarships that are currently available at Joliet Junior College for in-demand career fields. If interested, I encourage you to read more about each opportunity at the link provided here. We recommend that students apply for scholarships. There are thousands of dollars of scholarships that go unused each year because people do not apply for them. In addition to checking at each of your individual colleges, here are some free scholarship search sites to check out. We never recommend that you pay a fee for a scholarship search. If you need assistance in completing your FAFSA or alternative application, that's what we're here for. There are helpful videos available on our website, jjc.edu/financial aid. You can also view our upcoming schedule for financial aid application completion nights on our website. 2026-2027 financial aid application completion nights will begin in October 2025. You do not need to be a JJC student or be planning to attend JJC in order to receive assistance. Our services are open to the community. We also offer virtual and in-person appointments. You can call our office to schedule one of those. If you are planning to attend a completion night or an appointment, be sure all contributors create their FSA IDs prior so that there are no delays in submitting the FAFSA. And don't forget to have copies of your federal income tax forms, W-2s, and any other asset or income information when you attend. Some final tips and reminders. Financial aid, as I mentioned, is a yearly process, so complete the FAFSA every year on October 1st. Apply early as the process is not over when you submit your FAFSA. There may be additional forms and documents that your school will be requesting. Remember your FSA ID and password or store it somewhere secure. You will need this every year to complete your FAFSA. Tax return and income information is needed every year when completing the FAFSA form, so make sure you store those somewhere secure as well. We always recommend adding your local community college to the FAFSA. Joliet Junior College's school code is 001699 if you'd like to add us. This will minimize any delays in financial aid processing in the event of a last-minute decision to stay local. Use the internet to collect information on financial aid and on preparing for college cost. There's a ton of information on the internet and on your college's financial aid websites and portals, so just take time to do some research. Make sure to complete an admissions application at each school that you listed on the FAFSA so that they can begin communicating with you via their student email or student portal system about your financial aid opportunities with their institution. Ask questions. That's what your school's financial aid offices are there for, and consider all options available. Keep copies of all the forms and worksheets for your records that you would be submitting to the school's financial aid offices. Inform your financial aid office if you've had any major changes affecting your family's income. And of course, read all communication that's coming from the Department of Education as well as colleges, as there may be important information and deadlines in there. And speaking of deadlines, start early and plan ahead so that you can meet all deadlines. State grants do run out as they are first come, first serve, so be sure to submit the FAFSA or alternative application as soon as possible after every October 1st. Some colleges are going to require additional forms or verification documents, so check with your college about what they require and the deadlines that you must meet for them. And some colleges require students to file their FAFSA by a particular deadline. So again, just be sure to check with and work with your college's financial aid office. Colleges also typically have a payment due date. that you need to meet or risk losing the classes you are registered for. You will want to know when that date is and be sure that your financial aid is finalized long before then. Here is a list of helpful resources, many of which I have mentioned throughout this presentation. If you have any other general questions about financial aid, don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can see our contact information here on this slide. And don't forget to visit our website at jjc.edu/financial aid to view more help videos or information about our upcoming application completion nights. Thank you for joining me today. I hope it was helpful and have a great day.